Welcome to the Myth, Legend and Lore podcast. Today I am delighted to welcome back our good friend Joshua Gillingham, author of the Gatewatch and the creator of a game that is the cause of quite a bit of excitement. Althingi, a Viking game of strength and influence. Now Joshua and I had a great time catching up and talking about Althingi. However, the first time we recorded, the connection wasn't the best. So here we go with round 2. Hi Joshua, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi Siobhan, thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be back.
Gosh, not at all. It's just great to have you back. And I'm really excited for our discussion today. But 2020 has been a tough year. A highlight for me, and so many other people I think, was the release of the Gatewatch, which has been a huge success. But you've also been busy with a few other projects, Althingi being one of them. And it's set in a really fascinating point in history. Can you tell us a little bit more about the theme and strategy behind the game?
Yeah, so when people think about Vikings, oftentimes they're thinking about these raiders and horned helmets who are terrorizing the coasts of England and France. In reality, so much was going on in the Viking world at this time. Now, the raids and the exploration into parts of mainland Europe were obviously a very important part of Viking history. But one part that gets overlooked is this migration of Vikings to Iceland. And this was set in a really interesting historical context. Norway was just sort of becoming one single kingdom, united under this sort of semi-mythical character of Harold Finehair, who unites lots of the different chieftaincies, defeats some key figures, and ends up creating what we think of today as Norway. A lot of the Vikings were not happy living under a king, and so this caused this sort of exodus to Iceland, which had been recently discovered, some people think by accident, maybe a sailor who was blown off course. It was way out in the Atlantic Ocean, and the people who ended up fleeing Norway specifically to go to Iceland to preserve their freedom, to preserve their way of life, just fascinate me. And so I really tried to capture that with the game. There's this sort of gritty defiance to the character art and to the sketches of the maps, even the treasures and the weapons. All these things kind of try to capture this spirit of defiance. And the strategy of the game is to gain the most influence at the Althingi. Now, the Althingi was one of these unique things that was preserved by these Vikings going from Norway to Iceland. As Norway continued its process of Christianization, this practice of meeting, typically in Norway, they'd call it a thing, which was a gathering of powerful and influential people. In Iceland, it was called the Althingi. And the Althingi was for people all over the island. They'd gather in this one place called Thingvellir. You can still go there today if you'd like. And there they would barter, they'd trade, they'd feast, and most importantly, they'd settle legal disputes. And so this is the context of the game. You're a powerful chieftain at the Althingi, and you're trying to win the most influence by bribing Vikings to join your camp and strategically eliminating influence in other camps.
Oh, it really is just such a brilliant idea for a game. And to know too that you are a fan of the sagas of the Icelanders, and I was wondering, were there any in particular that provided inspiration for the game or the characters themselves?
Oh, for sure, for sure. In fact, every character in the game is not a historical figure, but is sort of a nod to a different one of my favorite either Icelandic figures from the sagas or a character from Norse mythology, because in my mind, those are two very sort of intertwined themes and topics. One of the reasons we know so much about the Norse gods and the pantheon and their stories is because of the people who migrated to Iceland and preserved those stories, later writing them down, such as Snorri Sturluson, right, who writes these stories and is one of the best sources, though not a perfect source, one of the best sources we have. So I'll mention one in particular, Siobhan, because I know on your podcast you've featured her, and that is Out the Deep-Minded, or as I learned through your series with Johanna, Alf, which I didn't realize that had been mistranslated so many times. I thought it was a D on the end, but it is actually the Icelandic Alf. So she is basically royalty from Scotland. Her husband is a Viking and is involved in some of the conflicts there, and things don't go well for her family. She flees from Scotland, taking her loyal followers, taking some of the wealth that she's accrued, and she goes to Iceland, which is a risky move for anyone, but particularly, I think for a female leader, it's especially bold at this period in time to, to have such a loyal following, warriors and people who can work in terms of, household duties, but also, farming. We're really sort of discovering a new land. But she goes boldly, and she features in many of the different sagas. She's often sort of referred to, she's kind of the epitome of sort of wisdom, and people go to her for counsel. People go to her for help for legal disputes, and she's just one of those characters that really pops out. So one of the characters that is in the game is Althingi, and Althingi, of course, is a nod to her.
Goodness, I just applaud your choice of Earth as inspiration for a character, and adding the extra dimension of Osiris is utterly brilliant. And thank you so much from Johanna and myself as well for listening to Beat for Rule. We're having a great time with the series and can't wait to get back on it. So one thing that immediately caught my eye was the artwork. It's stunning. Looking at the level of detail, it's clear your team spent a lot of time on the design. Was that an important aspect that you wanted to get just right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And when I designed this game, I really wanted to make sure that the game stood out, that I had a vision for its aesthetic, and I needed to get this right. I couldn't have, this game set in historical Iceland with Vikings wearing helmets and, Vikings wearing like sexy leather bikinis. That just didn't happen. Iceland's a cold place. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yep.
I was really lucky to be able to connect with an artist named Lana Shestova. And Lana Shestova is a Viking reenactor and an artist. She's actually from Russia. And we worked together to create this aesthetic. I kind of described my vision, and we kind of went back and forth. And I am really happy with how the game turned out. And everybody looks at the game so far and has got back to me, says, the artwork is so striking. It's a little bit bleak, it's a little bit gritty, but it does capture that aesthetic I was after. That sort of spirit of defiance, that sort of love of freedom. You're fighting against the political system by fleeing Norway. You're fighting against the elements in Iceland. Iceland's not an easy place to live, and there are a lot of new challenges that come up with this new colony. There's a lot of chaos at the beginning. The Althingi is sort of an attempt to bring some sort of law and order by preserving the Old Norse laws, and I really am happy with how Lada ended up doing the art for the game. I'm every time I look at it, I'm so pleased.
Definitely. I think the artwork has really caught the spirit of Althingi, and it has such a unique look that I think fans are really going to love as well. And on the Kickstarter site, you've also got some brilliant upgrade items and stretch goals too.
Yes. So we're running the game on Kickstarter right now in partnership with Outland Entertainment. They've been so great to work with. And one of the best things about working with them is that we've been able to upgrade the game for Kickstarter backers. And so we've got some exclusive upgrades, which will really enhance sort of the feel of the gameplay and the way players can immerse themselves in it. The first, and this has been the most popular reward, is a metal coin with the runes scratched in both sides. There are two runes that feature heavily in the game, and that acts as the first player token. And believe me, I love board games. I like quick play games. I like fun party games. I like deep strategy games. I go to a board game night every Friday, and our average gameplay length is typically 2.5 to 3 hours. So I love all sorts of games, and nothing gets you into a game more than the art and high quality components. So that metal coin will be a big boost. On top of that, we also have a neoprene playmat. And since this is a card game, anybody who's played a lot of cards, whether it's Magic the Gathering or whatever other sort of card game you've played, it's really hard to play cards on a hard surface, like to pick up the cards, to flip them over, to lay them down. And this neoprene mat, not only does it feature some of the awesome art from the game, but it also makes it easier for players to lay things out. It shows where the cards go and where players are supposed to sit. And once again, it's just that next level of immersion in the gameplay. Last but not least, of course, it's COVID time, and so we wanted to be sensitive to the fact that it's getting more and more difficult. Even just to sit across from somebody at a table is getting tricky these days. I know we're working together as a society. We're trying to find a vaccine for this, but as a nod to that, we've partnered with an Icelandic designer from the UK. Her name is Sigrun, and Sigrun does all sorts of design. She's a fashion designer. She has her own shop. She's designed a custom runic pattern for our masks that we're offering at the top tier. And so top tier backers will get 2 of those masks, very high quality. And once again, we want people to play safe and have fun.
I think the upgrade items are a stroke of genius, and it just shows how much thought you've put into every aspect of the game, which is hugely important for the player too. How can listeners support the project and get involved?
So right now we are on Kickstarter, and there is only 1 week left as of today. So go to Kickstarter, search Althingi, One Will Rise, and you can take a look at the backing options. The base game is only $20 US, and so we really wanted to make this accessible. It's a card game. There's not a lot of there's no like 3D printed components, and so yeah, it's accessible to anybody who's into Vikings and board games. If you want to check out the upgraded components, those are all featured on the page as well, and that'll be running until December 1st at 11 a.m. December 1st is your very last chance to get in on this game and to get your own copy.
And do you have a date in mind for the release?
So once again, the Kickstarter wraps up December 1st. Then we'll go to order the game. We'll get the components lined up. We'll track down people's addresses for all the backers who back the game, and we will be shipping games out. We're giving ourselves a little bit of extra time just due to COVID delays. So it'll be June 2021 is when we're aiming to get the games out.
Well, that's a day we can definitely look forward to next year. But tell me, Joshua, have you got any plans for the launch of Althingi? I think you've definitely earned a wee celebration. You have worked so hard this year.
I hope so. Pending a successful launch, yes, of course, we'll have a big celebration. And I can tell you already, besides this amazing podcast, which is one of my favorites online, I'm not just saying that because I'm on this podcast right now. I love this podcast. We are also pairing up with Saga Thing, which is another great Viking podcast. I know, Siobhan, you and I have talked about how much we love that podcast as well. They're really excited about the game and the theme, and they're going to be giving away a free promotional copy as part of the launch. I'm sure that we'll have other plans too. My head right now is mostly just in the Kickstarter because if you ever run a Kickstarter, it's a lot of work, and it's very exciting. Kind of takes up all your time and energy for that period of time. We'll definitely do a fun launch event.
Oh, crikey, Joshua, you are doing a phenomenal job with the Kickstarter. It's going so well. And John and Andy over at Saga Thing are great chaps, and I'm so excited that they're getting involved. We love their podcast and recommend listeners, please go check it out. And I guess that next year isn't that far away at all. So Joshua, can you tell us about some of the upcoming projects you're working on and those that are due for release?
Yes, I have a lot of energy, and so there's always something new on the go. I think you're the same way, Siobhan. I know we've talked about this a few times, but yes. So two things. One is the sequel to my book, The Gatewatch, which is a troll hunting saga inspired by the Norse myths. I've been getting lots of messages since its release in May. All the messages have been saying, when is the second book coming out? So the second book is finished. The art was actually featured. There was a cover reveal on Fanfi Addict on November 18th. So if you want to check out Fanfi Addict, they've got a feature of the art there, and I'm hoping tentatively for release date in April 2021. So keep an eye out. If you go to crowsnestbooks.com and you go to the Gatewatch page, there is actually a sign up for notifications for the Everspring, the sequel. If you'd like to be notified the minutes that the release date has been set, I encourage you to go check out the crowsnest.com page, or sorry, crowsnestbooks.com page, and sign up to get notified.
Absolutely. I'll put all of today's links in the show description so the listeners can easily find out where to go for the Kickstarter and updates on Joshua's next book.
The other exciting thing that we have coming up, and I'm going to hint at this because you're involved in this as well, Siobhan, is the game Althingi features a bunch of Viking characters. And in talking with the publisher, one of the editors said, wouldn't it be fun to do a collection of short stories, historical fiction based on the game characters in that same time period? And I said, that would be really fun. Would we open up queries? And they said, why don't you go around and ask your author friends who you've kind of worked with, some of the people you know, and I'm so blessed to be connected to so many talented authors within this Viking history fan community, and make an anthology. So that was the original plan, and as plans developed, we decided it would be really cool to look at the intersection of not just Vikings at that time, but the interactions between Vikings and the Islamic kingdoms, because at that time, medieval Europe was sort of in the Dark Ages, mainland Europe, and that's kind of how we learn history as, those being the Dark Ages. But this was a golden age for the Vikings. I mean, they were exploring all different kinds of places. They were discovering new things. They were going further north than a lot of other people from mainland Europe had even thought possible. And at the same time, Islamic kingdoms were really flourishing. For example, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad was at its peak around the same time. And there were interactions between Vikings and Islamic travelers, sometimes conflicts, sometimes they're fighting together, all sorts of different things. And so we paired up with Muhammad Ahmed, who co-edited another anthology called A Mosque Among the Stars, which was a book of Islamic sci-fi. Very cool book. And he agreed to hop on board. I asked him, do you like Vikings? And he says, everybody likes Vikings. Yeah, that sounds great. So we've got this really cool anthology project coming out, and I'll have more details on that in the spring.
Yeah, so the anthology, well, this has been one of the most exciting writing projects that I have worked on for a while. I've been trying so hard not to give anything away and to keep it a big secret, but I can say that you've given me the chance to try something slightly different that I'd been wanting to do for a really long time, and for me the theme lends itself really well to the style of writing, and it's just been such an honour to work in this project with you, and it's always a huge amount of fun whenever we're working on something. So yeah, the anthology is going to be just amazing. What a phenomenal group of writers. Yeah, well done, I have to say, well done. And my thanks, Joshua, for joining me today. But before we go, how might listeners get in touch, find the Kickstarter, and of course, where might they buy a copy of the Gatewatch?
Siobhan, the pleasure has been all mine. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I love coming to chat with you. And yes, if listeners would like to get in touch with me, I am very active on Twitter. And so I'm at Josh M. Gillingham, and I post lots about all the things I'm doing there. I have a website, joshuagillingham.ca, and you can find out a bit more about me and my books and my games there. The game is on the Outland Entertainment website. So if you want to check out Althingi, you can get a sneak peek of sort of the game itself on the Outland Entertainment website. Even better, go to Kickstarter and check out the Kickstarter Althingi One Will Rise. That'll be up on Kickstarter until December 1st. Last but not least, my book, The Gatewatch, as well as the upcoming sequel, The Everspring, is on crowsnestbooks.com. That is a Canadian publisher from Toronto. Super proud to be able to work with them and very excited about the release.
If you guys hold on for just a moment or two, we have an excerpt from a fantastic saga for you, Grettir's Saga. Grettir's Saga is a wonderful tale of outlawry, feuding, the slaying of creatures of this realm and the next, and revenge. If you haven't already read this saga, we wholeheartedly recommend you give it a try. And the chaps over at Saga Thing have an excellent series of episodes detailing the adventures of Grettir the Outlaw. A great translation is available by Jesse Byok, as well as the Icelandic Saga database, which was the source of today's adaptation. There are some great descriptions of the Althingi throughout the saga. We have chosen a section at the beginning of Grettir's story, for reasons that will soon become clear. But for now, thank you again, Joshua.
Thanks so much, Siobhan. Have a great day. Talk to you again soon.
Grettir's Saga, Chapter 16, of the Slaying of Skeggi. Now Thorkel Krafla, the Scratcher, began to grow very old. As a chieftain, he had the rule of Vatnsdal and was a great man. He was a close friend of Asmund the Grey-Haired, on account of their kinship. Thorkel rode to Bjarg every year to see his kin, and he did so in the spring following these matters just told. Asmund and Asdis welcomed him most heartily. He stayed there for 3 nights, and many things did the kinsmen speak of between them. Thorkel asked Asmund about the nature of his sons, as to what kind of craft they would be likely to take to. Asmund said he thought Atli would make a great man at farming, foreseeing, and money-making. Thorkel answered, "A useful man like yourself. But what do you say of Grettir?" Asmund said, "Of him I say that he will be a strong man, but an uncontrollable one. With me he has been difficult, and shown a wrathful temperament." Thorkel answered, "That does not bode well, my kinsman." Then he said, "But how shall we settle about our riding to the Althing next summer?" Asmund answered, "I am growing heavy for wayfaring, and would rather stay at home." "And would you like it if Atli went in your stead?" said Thorkel. "I do not see how I could spare him," said Asmund. because of the farm work and the ingathering of the household stores. But Grettir will not work, and yet he is so clever, so much so that I deem he will know how to carry out my legal responsibilities for me. Well, that is your decision to make, said Thorkel, and prepared for the journey home, and Asmund saw him off with many fine gifts. Some time after this, Thorkel left for the Althing. He rode with 60 men, all of whom were members of his chieftaincy. And when he came to Bjarg, Grettir rode with him. They rode south over the heath that is called 2 days' ride, but on this mountain the grounds were poor. Therefore they rode fast across it down to the settled lands, and when they came down to Flute tongue, they thought it was time to sleep. So they took the bridles off their horses and let them graze with the saddles on. They lay sleeping till far on in the day, and when they awoke, the men went about looking for their horses, but they had each gone on their own way, and some of them had been rolling on the ground. Grettir was the last to find his horse. Now it was the custom in those days that men should carry their own provisions when they rode to the Althing, and most bore meal bags tied to their saddles. The saddle of Grettir's horse had slipped under its belly, and the meal bag was gone, and no matter where he looked for it, it was not to be found. At that moment, Grettir caught sight of a man running. Grettir asked who he was. The man answered that his name was Skeggi, and that he was a housecarl from the ridge in Vatnsdal. "I am one of Thorkel's men," he said, "but carelessly I've lost my meal bag." Grettir said, "Odd haps are the worst haps, for I also have lost the meal sack which I owned. Let us both search together." Skeggi liked this idea well, and for a while they searched together. But all of a sudden Skeggi dashed off and picked up a bag from the ground. Grettir saw him stoop and asked what he had there. "My meal sack," said Skeggi. "Who says so?" said Grettir. "Let me see it, for many a thing is not what it seems." Skeggi said that no man should take from him what was his own, but Grettir caught hold of the bag, and the two men tugged it between them, both trying hard to get the best of it. "It is to be wondered at," said the housecarl, "that because you Vatnsdal men think that other men are not as wealthy as you, that they should not defend their property." Grettir said that it had nothing to do with the worth of men. And Skeggi answered, "If Odin were closer, he would wring your neck as he did at the ball game." "Good," said Grettir, "but however this goes, you won't be the one to throttle my neck." Then Skeggi got hold of his axe and cleaved at Grettir. When Grettir saw that, he caught the axe handle with the left hand bladeward of Skeggi's hand, so hard that straight away was the axe yanked from his hold. Then Grettir drove that same axe into Skeggi's head, so that it sunk into the brain, and the housecarl fell dead to the earth. Then Grettir seized the meal bag and threw it across his saddle, and rode after his companions. Now Thorkel rode ahead of them all, for he had no misgivings of such things befalling. But men missed Skeggi from the company, and when Grettir caught up, they asked him what he knew of Skeggi. And this he sang. "A rock troll her weight did throw at Skeggi's throat a while ago. Over the battle ogress ran, the red blood of the serving man. Her deadly iron mouth did gape above him, till clean out of shape. She tore his head and let out his life, and I certainly saw their strife." Then Thorkel's men quickly reacted to these words, and said that surely trolls had not taken the man in broad daylight. Thorkel grew silent, thinking. He finally said, The matter is likely to be quite other than this, and I think that Grettir has in all likelihood killed him. So tell me then, what happened? Then Grettir told all a full account of his and Skeggi's dealings. Thorkel said, "This has come to pass most unluckily, for Skeggi was a follower of mine, and was a man of good kin. But I shall deal with the matter. I shall pay the compensation upon judgment. But as to the question of outlawry, that I cannot settle. Now you must choose, Grettir, whether you wish to go to the Althing and risk the turn of matters, or go back home." Grettir chose to go to the Althing. The case was prosecuted by the heirs of the slain man. Thorkel supported Grettir and paid up all the fines. But Grettir could not escape outlawry and had to keep abroad for 3 winters. When the chiefs rode from the Althing, they gathered under Sledge Hill before going their separate ways. It was then that Grettir lifted a stone, which now lies there in the grass and is called Grettir's Heave. Many men went to see the stone and found it a great wonder that so young a man could lift such a huge rock. Grettir rode home to Bjarg and told the tale of his journey to his father. Asmund said little, except that Grettir would turn out an unruly man. Thank you so much for joining us today. My thanks to each and every one of you, and of course, to the Patreon family. Without your support, none of this could be possible. But for now, take care. I'm Siobhan Clark, and you've been listening to the Myth, Legend, and Lore podcast.